Generation Z, or those born between 1997 and 2012, appears to be shaping the future of work. A new report by online jobs platform JobStreet says Gen Zs are more discerning in picking the company they want to work for. Aside from stability, work-life balance, and competitive salary, they are also looking at company values and political stances when applying for a job. And while they may be perceived as demanding by some, JobStreet says their concerns are completely valid given a changing labor market. So, how can employers attract and retain Gen Zs? Let's ask our next guest for his insight, Jonathan Yabut of JY Consultancy and Ventures. So, first of all, with 65% of the workforce now comprised of Gen Zs, have you seen any significant changes or shifts in the workplace?
Well, this might not be a good news for a lot of employers, but it seems like a lot of employers are budging into the requests of the Gen Zs. Usually, it's more of like, what do employers want? And therefore, the applicants follow the employers. But this time, it seems like because the Gen Zs want to work from home, the Gen Zs want flexible benefits and flexible working hours, a lot of companies lately in a post-pandemic world have been adjusting to what the Gen Zs have been clamoring for. So this may be a good thing for the applicants, but not always a good thing also for employers who need to adjust to a specific demographic.
Can employers actually afford to be, I guess, not to give in to these requests of the Gen Zs?
Well, two things. One, a lot of employers are admitting to the fact that the Gen Zs contribute a big chunk of what the business needs, and that is they're very tech savvy. A lot of businesses these days are very driven by digital technology. And when you have a generation who is so good with it that they don't need a lot of learning curve, you really want to give in to their requests. Number two, I think a lot of the Gen X and even the more adulting Gen Ys are realizing, hey, wait a minute, I think what the Gen Zs have been clamoring for is something that what we also need. So if you notice, it's becoming more permanent these days that companies now have 4-day week for work, or Friday is usually allotted for working from home, or it's even an off day. So I think we can confidently say that the pandemic has made a lot of companies realize that life is short. We can still be productive even if we're only working 4 days a week, or even if a lot of our employees are working from home. So to a certain extent, I think it's a welcomed change for many of us.
So, in other words, do you agree that these changes are long overdue, although they might partly attribute it to the entry of the Gen Zs?
I think the pandemic became a catalyst for it, but I also think because the Gen Z have been very vocal about it, they have the power of social media. They have the power to talk about it with their peers, and they also have the power of volume. We are comprising majority of the applicants and the employees right now. Therefore, if you don't budge and give into our request, you might have a harder time looking for other employees. So I do welcome it. I do have reservations, however, of putting all of your eggs in your basket. So employers also need to tame that they have to balance what the employees want versus what's best for the company's bottom line.
Right now there's an assumption that Gen Zs are demanding. Is it fair to say that, or should we admit that they know something better, or maybe we should just follow them, and it will be for the benefit of the company as a whole?
I think it's safe to say that when we reach the age of adolescence, we all are going to be self-entitled. And that's not only specific to the Gen Z. I think when the Gen Ys were also in their adolescent years, when the Gen X and the baby boomers were also in their adolescent years, we all had the same thing. This is proven by science. When you are younger, your prefrontal cortex is not fully developed. That is the part of your brain that is responsible for rational decision making. And when you happen to be younger, it's your amygdala that takes over. The amygdala is responsible for emotional, animal instincts. All of these things are all about what's in it for me, me. So if I was an employer, I would strongly urge my managers to not see it in a bad light. Not all Gen Z employees are selfish or entitled because they want to be so. They don't want to be deliberately as such. It's because what their hormones are calling for. So when we conduct our workshops, we often tell our clients, we have to cover the interests and we have to cover the sense of entitlement of these people. So for example, if you're a manager, increase your level of frequency of giving feedback. You cannot just give your feedback at the end of the year when you have Gen Z employees, because they will always clamor for likes, for comments. The point of affirmation is also evident in the workplace. So you have to give your comments and feedback on a weekly, monthly, and sometimes even quarterly basis. These are the changes that we have noticed have become more dominant in the workplace lately.
Okay, so that said, based on your observations, what are the biggest differences among Gen Zs, millennials, Gen X, and even boomers in the workplace? I'm sure there are some differences, not only because of the age.
Lots. I wish I had a 1 hour session to talk about this. The one thing that really separates the Gen Z from the rest is they are digital natives, meaning they do not have a concept of what was life before Google Maps. What was life before when we were using diskettes, when we were using Manila papers, them to have this concept of instant gratification, which to a certain extent, some millennials already possess. But that instant gratification means that when I'm looking for a shortcut at work, it's not because I'm lazy. I'm looking for a shortcut because it is what's normal in my lifestyle and in my choices in life. So again, I'm going to call out leaders here. When we often see a Gen Z complaining that, do we really have to undergo this process? Do we really have to undergo a long step? It's not because they're lazy. It's because from their point of view, there must be a faster way. There must be an easier way to do this. And I think we can learn a thing or two from that mindset. It pushes and pressures us to be more efficient. It challenges and questions us. Just because we've been doing this for 20 years or 30 years doesn't mean it's the correct way of doing it. Maybe it's time to innovate. Maybe it's time to also change. This is the one thing that I will always say separates the Gen Z from the rest of the other generations.
And I think I've read that Gen Zs are, I guess, more value oriented. So for them, a company's reputation is important. Is that something that you actually see among Gen Zs?
Yes, I love this question. 2 days ago, we were conducting a workshop for a company, training their recruiters and their HR. And it's interesting, one of the HR participants even said, I was shocked because I was burdened by the applicant to tell them what exactly are the CSR activities of the company. And they even asked me, what is the company's stand when it comes to climate change? What is the company's stand about diversity or, let's say, LGBTQ issues? So the Generation Z, therefore, because they've been socialized, not just by their environment, but by social media, they're very brave to make a stand. And the reason why they're very courageous about it is because they know that they have a community. They drive it by numbers. If I stand for diversity, if I stand for climate change, I know that there's another Gen Z out there who's going to agree with me. And it's easy for me to collect a critical mass because I can mobilize all of my friends on TikTok, on social media, for example.
Are they very, I guess, when they look for a job, are they focused on the pesos and cents and that's all there is to it? Or are they looking for something else?
So I want to share some data. Unfortunately, there aren't much data in Asia and in the Philippines. But just to give you an idea, the data in the US and Europe states that the Gen Z is not as financially driven as your Gen X and millennials. So the Gen X, for example, their mindset is, I want to build my own home. I want to have my own car. The Gen Z is more about sharing resources. So this is a generation that has been raised with the idea of Airbnb, the idea of Uber, the idea of Grab. So their mindset is, why do I need to buy a property if I can rent? And I don't need to spend that much money because I want to spend my money on my travels, on my gadgets. So for them, it's not just about the durables, it's about the short-term consumables that matter. So again, it might come from their age. Maybe at this point, they don't see yet the idea of saving or investing. But you have to understand that technology has changed the way they see what investing is. Investing for them isn't just about what the long run is for, and neither do they subscribe fully to capitalism. They subscribe to the idea that I don't need to have so much in life. As long as I'm happy and as long as I'm able to share it with my friends, I think that's the kind of lifestyle that I can also achieve.
In closing, how can a company really recalibrate itself, its operations, its culture to, I guess, attract and retain Gen Zs?
So 3 things, if I were to summarize. 1, the social mission, the social purpose of the company has to be clear and has to be authentic. When you have Gen Zs who are very picky and choosy, and we're talking about wanting the cream of the crop, for example, these people are not just going to apply for a job because they're in it for the money. Money is important because it subsidizes our lifestyle, But Gen Z don't just work for the finances. They work for what they think is best for the society. So it's a very future-driven, conscious generation also. The second one is social media has to be embraced as a primary influencer of their decisions. So take note that Gen Z have two personalities, their real life personality and their online personality. I have a lot of Gen Z employees, and I often notice what they tell to me in my meetings, what they tell to me when we are in the office are not exactly who they are when they post things online. So from time to time, without telling them that I am stalking them, I try to check what they do online, and it gives me a better sense of who they are in reality. Small things such as if Jungkook would make this presentation, because I find out that this employee was a BTS fan, it engages them better. And it's only because I found out something that they wouldn't tell me otherwise because they keep a different persona online. So moral lesson here is don't look at your Gen Z employees from face value. You have to dig deeper, and a big part of that is looking at their online personalities also. The third last I'd like to share is the driver for retaining Gen Z in any company is flexibility. I think flexibility is the name of the game. Because money is not only the most important thing, drive their engagement through compensation in kind. Gen Z love it when they get free subscription to gyms or when there is a gym inside the office because health is also important for them. Gen Z love it when they get subsidies, let's say for their travels. I've seen a lot of BPO companies who have 90% Gen Z or Gen Y employees, wherein they even have concepts of a leave for their pets if ever they get sick. They have a leave if ever they want to treat their parents for dinner, for example. They even have a salary that is only dedicated for the first salary you're going to spend for your parents because you finally have a job. So customizing these things are important because they're driving a big chunk of your employee base. It could be a driver for retaining your employees. And remember, at the time of post-pandemic, retention is the new recruitment.
Okay, so with that, thank you very much for your very interesting insights on these Gen Zs that I think, I mean, employers have to really focus on because, of course, we'll see more and more Gen Zs being part of the workforce. I mean, they're already a big chunk as it is. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, April. Thank you.
An inclusive workplace is one where there is a diverse set of employees coming from different ethnicities, gender, religion, age groups, and socioeconomic status, among other things. All employees in an inclusive workplace are treated with respect and fairness and are provided with equal opportunities in terms of career advancement. Policies of an inclusive workplace are also flexible, supporting the diverse needs of its employees, including flexible working hours and accommodations for persons with disabilities. Nowadays, more and more companies are adopting an inclusive workplace due to its numerous benefits. One of the most obvious benefits is enabling the company to tap a broader pool of talents, not confining the search for employees to a limited set of candidates and providing more flexibility will provide a company with more options to potentially hire better talents. Having better talent should in turn improve a company's output. Having an inclusive workplace will also boost a company's ability to innovate. This as it benefits from the different perspectives of its employees, which come from diverse backgrounds. Being more innovative should in turn help a company expand its customer base as it addresses the needs of more people. In fact, according to Harvard Business Review, companies that are in the top 25% for racial, ethnic, and gender diversity have a 25% greater probability of being more profitable than the median for their respective industry. A 6-year study completed in 2020 by McKinsey also has a similar conclusion, stating that diverse companies are 36% more profitable than less diverse companies. It is no wonder then that fund managers globally also care about workplace inclusivity in the stocks that they buy. According to a study conducted by Great Place to Work on the performance of publicly listed companies from 2007 to 2009, before, during, and after the Great Financial Crisis, companies with highly inclusive workplaces generated a return of 14.4%. In contrast, the broader S&P 500 index suffered a 35.5% decline during the same period. Hopefully, the numerous benefits that companies with inclusive workplaces enjoy will encourage more and more companies to adopt similar practices. Before we wrap up the show, we leave you with a quote from Pat Wathers, Chief People Officer at UKG. When we listen and celebrate what is common and different, we become a wiser, more inclusive, and better organization. And that's it for this week's edition of Insight. I'm April Tan. Thank you for watching.